The one mistake I do see, Oliver, is that people will go and they'll see someone who's been in the game for 10 years or 20 years, and they're in their first year, and they try to make that jump from year 1 to year 10. And they don't realize all the stuff that needs to happen in between. That this person has been climbing the steps of success and turning ceilings into floors, right? Or into stepping stones, and they just continue to push the ceiling up higher and higher and higher.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're here live with Kory MacKinnon. Now, Kory, you and I met recently, actually. Obviously, I've heard of you beforehand, but you and I met recently at a business results training. It was a Tony Robbins event, and there was a whole bunch of awesome A-listers there, like heavy hitters, awesome real estate investors, real estate agents, and entrepreneurs in general. And it was just a really great event. I think that being in a room where everybody was so committed to growth, there was so much commonality even between people that maybe, let's say, are in different industries. And I thought that was really cool. So I myself am not a real estate investor. I'm a marketer, but you were one of the people that I found that I resonated a lot with, just because I believe our outlooks were very similar, our mindsets. So let me just stop talking for a moment, give you the floor. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? What's your story?
Sure. So I'm Kory. I'm from actually Sarnia, Ontario, born and raised here, moved all over the country and somehow ended up back in my hometown. I guess it's different when you're raising kids. You want to be closer to your in-laws and your parents and things like that. In grade school, I kind of took school like a sport. And then I also found a sport that really helped to get me, able to travel around the world and stuff as well, which is the sport of Olympic weightlifting. So I did that for 13 years, got to represent Canada a few times and try out for some really big games like Olympic trials, Commonwealth trials, those different things. And then really got the business bug when I was like 19. Probably even sooner than that if you want to count my paper route, but started working in a franchise company with the Student Works Painting Company. They've been around since 1981, and I was with them from 97 until 2013, and just kind of got plugged into a franchise type of a system where a lot of the heavy lifting was already done for you and figured out, and you could just go spin that wheel as hard and as fast as you want to. And I helped to improve the wheel, update their systems and their policies and their SOPs and all those different things over time, which was great. We got to see the company close to triple during my stay there. And then, back in 2005, I bought my first income property after kind of being exposed to this as a young kid. Grew up in a duplex, and my best friend's dad was a realtor, and seeing my dad kind of dabble in real estate, but never really break through or have a lot of success. I saw other people doing it right around the time when Rich Dad, Poor Dad, the book came out. And I just said, you know what, if all these other people are doing it, it's actually like a business. It's like a system. And as long as you run it like a business, it will actually thrive like a good scalable business. So that's when I started taking off in 2005, to the point where my portfolio was overtaking my regular day job income. And I just said, you know what, I got to make a decision here. And I made a decision for more financial freedom and have my time back to spend with my growing family. So it's been a great ride the past almost 20 years, and the last 10 years of being unemployed, I guess. Now I do my own consulting and help other people that want to do the same. So, and getting into rooms, I'm always looking to get into a great room, give myself a mental oil change per se, right? And that's what happened in Burlington with Tony Robbins, top coach, and his brother-in-law, and meeting great people like you in the lobby and in the room. It was awesome. So that's a little bit about me.
So I want to go back to a couple of things. First off, you mentioned with the franchise, it's all of the systems, everything's already set up. It's just about running the machine. But I think what's interesting about that is the work wasn't done for you. You still had to put all of that effort in. And that's kind of what I was hearing is similar to real estate investing is, yes, it's work. You got to find the right deals. Obviously, you got to put the amount of effort into it to make it profitable. But the machine is there, and there's already like a manual on how to actually run it. Did you find that running the franchise kind of is similar to running a real estate investment portfolio?
A little bit, definitely the proof of concept is there. Like real estate's created more millionaires than any other asset class. Even Bitcoin and everything else that's coming out these days. So it's just tried and true over time. And the playbook is changing though a little bit as, we're printing more money and interest rates are going up, and there's uncertainty in the market, but we also have a lot of immigration coming into Canada. So there's lots of different moving parts here, different than our parents' generation, that's for sure. And, but it is because of the asset class that has been proven. Now people just got to plug in the effort and the right work, but it's a very shiny industry. I mean, people can get lost in all the different cities and, what type of real estate investing do I do? Right. So that's when it's important to make sure you have some good guidance and listening to podcasts like this and people who know what they're doing and have been doing this for a while, not just a flash in the pan.
Yeah, I like that you kind of touching on there, I think, because you mentioned that your father was he dabbled in real estate investing, but didn't have the same levels of success. So I like that you used the word shiny, because I want to get back into later on in the episode about how do you identify the difference between a shiny object versus an opportunity. Because I think it's very easy for someone to say that this is what you got to do, and if you're not doing it, it's because you don't care enough or you're not willing to work hard. But it's scary because there are things out there that aren't going to work, that are shiny objects, and there are people out there that are just pushing, do, and it doesn't always work. So how do you kind of know which avenue to pursue? So I'm just going to shelve that for a second. We'll get back into it later. But something that you touched on, you said you were an A student in school and you treated it like a sport. Now, I know in our conversations that you were an athlete growing up. Tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. So, when I was young, I was basically the youngest kid in the class, right? My birthday is December 24th. So if you kind of do the math, if I was born a week later, I would have been one of the oldest kids in the class because I would have been held back a year. So because of that, I was always, trying to keep up with kids that were about a year older. Maybe they're only 3 months older, 6 months older, 10 months older, but I was always trying to keep up. And I was actually a good thing, right? I think looking back now, it was a blessing. And never the most talented kid. It's not like I was the kid that is that person wow, look at that phenom kicking the soccer ball and the best kid on the team. No, I definitely had to work. And fortunately we grew up right beside the school field. So it's if I wanted to kick extra soccer balls, or, I did golf when I was young. It had to be sports that didn't really cost that much because hockey was too expensive. Single income family and 4 kids, so a family of 6 on one income, it's doable, but we just couldn't do all the lavish type of things for the double income families. That was right when the double income families, where it was more common for the mom to be going to work and those things too. And if they only had 1 or 2 kids, man, they could just spoil that kid like crazy, put them into whatever they wanted, right? So I found a sport that was, we were messing around with weights in my friend's basement when we were in grade 7 or 8 and didn't know what we were doing. I had a summer job between grade 8 and grade 9. It was cornetasseling, and there's people on the bus talking about there's this place in town where you can actually go and lift weights, and there's a coach there. He's been to the Olympics and all these different things. You should go check it out and try it out. And it didn't cost that much. You just had to run some bingos once in a while and help with fundraising and stuff like that. So I was always having part-time jobs since I was young anyway. So I always had my own scratch to spend. So yeah, it was a very interesting sport. It's really blown up now with CrossFit, and you go in any city, there's a box to train in and all that sort of stuff. But we were literally lifting in an uninsulated garage, Rocky style, having to chop the wood, get the wood burning fire going, and then wait for the place to warm up before you could actually train in the wintertime. So
chasing chickens to get light on your feet?
Not quite, but I mean, literally we had the gymnastic rings tied up to the tree. If we want to do leg raises, that's how it goes. I remember one day one of the straps broke and I fell out of the tree. So it's just well, what do? You get up, brush yourself off, and strap it back to the tree and make sure it's stronger than before. But it's one of those just old iron game type of sports, right? Where people didn't complain. People didn't need to have their own bar or their own gym or whatever to do well at it. You just did it because you wanted to be strong and do something with yourself, right? Maximize your potential.
So when you started with that, did you think hey, I could be really good at this? I'm pretty good at this weightlifting thing. Or was it just, I enjoy doing it, I don't really care about where it's going to take me, I'm just doing it for fun?
When I looked at my friends, so when we were, I think there's 4 or 5 of us, lifting some weights down in the basement, and I could definitely hold my own with everybody else. And so I knew I had some baseline potential there. But later on, actually about 5 years ago, I actually got my DNA tested. I didn't get my muscle biopsy done, but it shows a lot of information that I'm kind of 50-50. I could be a little bit more of an endurance athlete. I could be a strength athlete. And the reason why I took it so far is because I put so much effort into it, right? It's also a very technical sport. So what I was maybe lacking in some strength, I made up for it in technique and flexibility and speed and stuff like that too. So fortunately, it wasn't just see how much you can lift off the ground or a squat or a bench press. This was very dynamic lifts over your head. So but yeah, long story short, I felt like I did have potential, but I definitely made sure that I put a lot of effort into it, a lot of training, a lot of prehab, rehab, all that sort of stuff to get better at it. Studied film, tape, just when you become obsessed about something, that's how you get further with it, right? A lot of people just kind of want to do the base minimum amount. What can I do to sort of be lazy and still get good at something? That's really not how it works these days. It's effort in, results out, and even then the results lag way behind the effort.
So how far did you go with that?
Yeah, I was a junior national team member. So junior national gold medalist at one point, won lots of junior medals under the age of 20. Because I think I kind of peaked, early. I broke my first provincial record when I was 15. And then when you get over 20, that's also where, you know, sometimes you get people that mature later. You get people that definitely have the genetics at that point too, where they're just freaks of nature and second, third generation, strong people in their family or whatever. It's also when people can make the decision whether they want to, you know, take additional supplements or not. Right. So I was never willing to go down that path. So I was top 3 in Canada, got to try out for some big games, got to represent Canada once, and made a comeback when I was 39 to 44 and 3-time national championship, Pan Am champion, all that sort of stuff, which was fun. So didn't take it to a high level, never made it my career, or never got paid to do it or anything like that. But I took it as far as I could, which was, you know, provincial champion many times over and national champion before too. So,
right. I mean, that's just basically as far as you could take it, like practically speaking. I mean, maybe there's 1 or 2 levels farther, but for all intents and purposes, substantially farther than a vast majority of people will ever go really in any discipline.
Yes.
And I think it begs the question, because you mentioned at the start that you weren't ever this athletic phenom, this kid that everybody would look at and be like, this guy's going to be an absolute beast, he's going to kill it. Yet you took it so far. How did your experience in the athletic realm affect your experiences in the business realm?
Yeah, you know, I'm sure people have read that book, that talent is overrated. And it really is true, because unfortunately in life, sometimes the most talented people just don't go into their God-given talents and pursue it. I mean, sometimes you do, and you see where the two forces collide. But, you know, I think as an athlete, someone has to train and work really hard for something. You get that natural born-in work ethic. And you also realize that, hey, not everything works, right? Like there was a lot of things that I tried to lift or do that, you know, failed, but these are like micro failures, right? It's not like the end of the world. If you miss a weight, maybe you drop the weight down, you try it again and you make the weight, and then you're building your confidence back up again. You'll try that heavier weight again in a week or 2, right? So it's not the end of the world. And what is it in golf? I guess the best golfers have the like a short-term memory, right? So when you learn not to take things personally, it's just something that you missed, right? It was a couple seconds, you can redo it, and you can come back again next week and do even better at it. I think it's important that people realize it's also an individual sport too. I wasn't relying on a team or anything like that. I was part of teams, but it was very individual based too. So you just basically get to see that, okay, if I put in this sort of effort as an athlete, this is what I could do as an entrepreneur or as an investor or whatever in my life, right? And there was a lot of thought behind it too, right? So you would think out your workouts, you would basically envision them in your head before they even happened. And the mind lots of times doesn't know the difference between like reality and make believe, right? So
Yes.
in life too, we're manifesting stuff, or at least you should be manifesting stuff in your head. What are your goals? What are your outcomes? What do you want your achievements to be? What's your vision board? All those different things, and focus intently on it, and don't stop until you get there, because anything is possible.
I think what's interesting is a lot of the time mindset, motivation, I think, is a word that's oftentimes, I'm not a big fan of the word motivation in general, but there is such a thing as momentum, right? And I think momentum is just a manifestation of, I guess, the reality that you've manifested for yourself. Let me give you an example. Let's say you're watching a soccer game, you're watching top athletes, and even these top athletes that have mastered their mindset and understood, like they understand, they have confidence in their own abilities more than most people would. However, let's say if a team goes on the attack and they have a really good chance and the goalkeeper makes a great save and it goes back out, all of a sudden they're playing with an extra spring in their step. Likewise, let's say a goalie lets in a howler and they make that mistake. These are the top goalies in the world, but that's going to affect their gameplay for the rest of the game. So you mentioned a couple of things. First off, golfers have short-term memory, but second off, the way that you manifest reality. So mindset, manifestation, momentum, these aren't like voodoo words that are just some hypothetical thing that doesn't actually affect us. You watch this in real life. You watch a team, the top athletes in the world, start to feel like something's happening. And when they feel like something is happening, it really happens. And for me, at least, in my limited understanding of what mindset is, I believe that's manifestation that you're watching in real time. Would you agree with that?
Totally. I mean, it's intention. It's, you know, your ability, like we're all energy, right? We're all energetic beings. And if you don't believe that, then try living without your heart beating, which is like using electrical current. And if your heart isn't working that well, then you get a pacemaker, right? To make sure that happens. So we're all energetic, and, you know, we're all connected on some degree as well. And there's a reason why sometimes these coaches can literally turn a team around at halftime and just give them that talk and really challenge them and push them and go, look, guys, you were not executing the game plan of what we came out here to do. You know, yes, they scored a goal on us, but don't let that steal your thunder. Don't let that steal your energy. We're going to come back now. We're going to work twice as hard. And I'm always a big believer that the best defense is the strong offense, right? So just go out there and make sure that you're always on the attack and don't just wait and react, right? So it's yeah, I mean, sports can be a momentum type of a thing, and motivation's got to come from inside, right? If you're looking for other people on the outside to give you motivation, like external motivation, I don't believe you'll go as far, right? If you're only motivated by incentives or bonuses, or as a kid, like you only do something if you get an allowance to do it. It's like, no, it's got to come from inside, right? There's got to be a deep burning desire to do something and reach your full potential, be more, and not be the kind of person at the end of your life you look back and think about who you could have been, right? You're actually fulfilling as much as you physically possibly can. I'll never retire, man. I love business. I love being on podcasts and talking with other entrepreneurs like you. And sure, I might slow down a little bit and enjoy life and family and stuff a little bit more. And you can do that along the way as well. But I'm always going to be looking to stay sharp and stay active and just help people, right? When you have a mission or a business that helps serve other people along the way, it's absolutely massive. It's huge. That's fulfilling your potential, your mission, your life, your purpose.
So let's say I've mastered my mindset and I've developed the ability to manifest reality, where I say, I'm going to live this kind of life. I'm going to be free. I'm going to have this, that. And I really do believe that, and I've mastered it. Now, all of a sudden, what I want to do is I want to look at the rubric, look at the roadmap that has been written by folks like yourself on how to actually succeed, for example, in real estate. The challenge is, as we mentioned earlier, there are legitimate shiny objects that pose as opportunities, and there are opportunities that you sometimes can tell yourself, don't get drawn into shiny objects. And sometimes it's just a matter of decisiveness. It's about just when you see an opportunity, but you're scared to take it, sometimes fear is stopping you. But other times there's legitimate concerns. What if it is a shiny object? What if this opportunity is, you just don't know. So how do you identify the difference?
A great question. And if you don't mind me, I'll back up a second. When people master their mindset, right? I think it's something that you're always going to be trying to work towards mastery. Mastery is the ultimate level, right? But I think people just need to get a really good handle on their mindset. So many people's mindsets are out of control, right? In the last 3 years have really created a lot of chaos and a lot of confusion for people. So, but having that strong mindset is super important. But when it comes to the shiny objects, yes, it's very important. A couple tips for people that are listening to this right now would be, number one, you got to look in the mirror and go, okay, what am I good at, right? What are my unique talents? And if you haven't done any personality profiling on yourself, you definitely should. People can actually reach out to me. I've got licenses where people can actually get a $100 personality profile for free if they want to learn more about themselves. Because I think the first portion of your life, you're learning about yourself. And the second half, you're actually like, okay, now that I know myself, because I live with myself every day, I'm actually going to go and maximize what I was brought in the world here to do. So it's got to line up with who you are, your talents, your team, your skill set. It's got to be coming from a legit source, right? Sometimes there's people that have grabbed your attention online and they're making a lot of noise or a lot of buzz about something, but it might just because, you got to follow the money too, right? Was there some sort of vested interest in them promoting a certain product or a thing or a strategy or whatever it might be? But at the end of the day, it's also going to be your skill set, right? You got to make sure you're in your lane. These things all typically stack on top of each other. So the one mistake I do see, Oliver, is that people will go and they'll see someone who's been in the game for 10 years or 20 years, and they're in their first year, and they try to make that jump from year 1 to year 10. And they don't realize all the stuff that needs to happen in between. That this person has been climbing the steps of success and turning ceilings into floors, right? Or into stepping stones. And they've just continued to push the ceiling up higher and higher and higher. So make sure that everybody realizes that there's seasons to things, there's levels to things, and there's background to people's success too, right? Like somebody might not realize that, oh, this guy's a great developer, but like, yeah, he's been on job sites since he was 6 years old with his dad, and he's kind of like second generation already, right? Or all these different backstories, right? So always try to find out the backstory of how someone became so successful. When you can dissect it and go, you know what? I'm on the same path. I can actually like take some of that and I could get on that path too. Or if you're on a totally different path and it's like, what would it take for me to embrace that shiny object or that next strategy? Sometimes you're not ready for it. Sometimes you are. And if you are, it's like, yeah, don't hold back. Don't be afraid just of some uncertainty if you're totally ready for it, right? And you have other people saying, no, man, you're built for this. You're totally ready for it. You can do this, right? Because I think the people that are closest to you aren't going to lead you wrong.
Sometimes though, like for example, your father, just in the example that you gave, so he followed some kind of roadmap and you followed some kind of roadmap, but the roadmap you followed, was it the same roadmap? Like what was the difference there?
Very true. I think my dad, who he had a father that could have been in the war. Unfortunately, my grandfather got sick and he couldn't actually fight in the war. But it was just a totally different generation. But it was a lot more entrepreneurial back then. I feel, like my grandfather was from Scotland, my mother's family was from Germany, and they just came into a country and you had to be entrepreneurial. There wasn't these big conglomerate type of stores, right? I mean, until Walmart came in and then Home Depot and just all these other big stores. So, the difference probably was that as an entrepreneur, you wanted to get land when you came to a new country, right? Because that's how you could also, have like a farm and a future. And maybe you were thinking more multi-generationally for your family. Because if for anybody here that spent time in Europe, that's kind of how you take care of your family, right? You go make sure that you have extra land or extra space to build or whatever, and you all stay pretty tight as a tribe.
So also, I think the fact that there was no such thing as an online business back then also probably affected that. So if you don't have land, you literally have nothing.
That's right. It's important. There was a lot more of it, right? And the world population was much lower too. So, I guess he just said like, hey, go, if you can get a rental property, that's good. If you can get a second one or a third one, but yeah, there wasn't as many people just scaling up to bigger portfolios, right? And there was no real access to information. There was no internet. There was no real books written on it. Even some of the real estate kind of teachers came out in the 80s. There wasn't really much going on in the 70s. So just trying to figure out the best they can. And my dad wasn't playing a long enough game. So even though he does have that delayed gratification, I think our parents definitely had that longer term mindset anyways. But if he wasn't willing to hold on to a property over a 5 or 10 year cycle, then yeah, he was probably going to sell for a loss, right? So whereas when I buy a property, I look at it and go, you know what? Is this something that I actually want to hold on to for 20 years? Like, is this something I want to give to my kids someday and have them manage? I just spent the whole day yesterday hanging out with my oldest son. He's 11. I want him to see, I don't usually get in the field, but I want to show them like when you are in the field, these are the things that the properties need. And these are the numbers behind them. And this is why it's beneficial to have some of these, as part of your retirement plan or your wealth creation plan. So, yeah.
Right. So it's almost like, it's almost like a shiny object versus opportunities could be like a spectrum, or even an opportunity could become a shiny object if you don't have the patience to watch it come to fruition or the ability to actually execute on it. And even a shiny object could become an opportunity if you have the ability to keep perspective and fail forward and whatever it is. I feel like it's right. So it's maybe the way you're explaining it, it doesn't sound like there's such a vast difference between here's a shiny object, here's an opportunity, and the two shall never meet. Like, it's not really like that.
Yeah, I mean, you got to vet the shiny object. You got to make sure you're ready for it, that it's right for you. And, some people, well, not some people, a lot of people actually just don't put enough time into, doing something, right? Even with your media company, you've been doing this for a while. I've been doing what I've been doing for a while. So, people always want that success in like 1 year, but it's like, give it 5 years, like give it a good go and just lead with value. That's something I really liked about you, Oliver, is just you're here to lead with value. And I think that's something that's so important right now during these challenging times. How can somebody get ahead? It's like, you'll never go wrong leading with value, because that's going to get remembered. Like, it's the law of reciprocation that it's important, right? Always give gifts in advance. And then, sometimes they come back, and that's amazing, right? Or at least it's an investment in someone else's bank account for when you do have to ask for a favor or reach out or a connection or whatever it might be.
Yeah. I kind of just want to touch on that just for one moment. Leading with value, at least for me as a marketer, my biggest obstacle, particularly when I was starting out, because I didn't really have a name or a podcast that I could lean back on, was how do I know you're not just another one of these guys just trying to sell me the next thing? And the only way really for me to differentiate myself was to not ask for anything and just say, here's what I can do for you right out of the gate. And if it wasn't for them, if they didn't see value in it, then that's also great feedback. But if they saw great value in it, then out of the gate, they're like, okay, this is not just another guy. And it became so much easier for me to build relationships. And then that idea, I can then build on that and, let's say, create a podcast and then offer people slots on the show. Or there was a period of time where I was having people come onto the show and I would give them free coaching on the show. But the podcast was just the tool to deliver the value. But the value is always, I guess, the leading thing.
Yes. 100%. I totally got that from you for sure as well. And it comes through you there. You're obviously on this planet for a reason there, Oliver. It's awesome.
I appreciate that, man. So let's ask then, during your journey, was there an exact moment in your life that you felt like you turned a corner? Because you started from humble beginnings, and then all of a sudden now, I don't want to say you're unrecognizable, because you're obviously the same person that you were when you were a kid from those humble beginnings. but there was definitely a momentum swing. So was there a moment that you can identify things are going to be different now?
Yeah, good question. Probably like my earliest recollection. I've told this story before on podcast too, but it was in grade 4, and I had my best friend's mom come up to me and just say, "Hey, got to have a serious talk with you," right? She actually wanted to meet in person. I thought I was in trouble or something. I was like, "What do we do?" Like, but she was like, "Look, this is something I wanted to have this in like a face-to-face, one-on-one conversation. Obviously, my son's not doing well in school, so there's very few people on this list of people that we want to ask for help, and basically, you're the person on the list." So just kind of getting that call as a leader at a very young age. And I could have easily said no, or I could have said yes, right? And because, I think as human beings, we all want to help each other at some different level, some more than others. I said yes at an early age. And I was like, hopefully it's in a subject that I actually like, right? Like science or math or just something else that I used to like literally, we'd race each other and try to get math things done quicker in our classes and things like that. And it was actually in French. I was like, okay, well, I'm getting like a B in French right now, but I'm sure if I studied harder, if I just, I gotta find a way to be able to teach this to my friend who's struggling in French, right? So just finding different ways to teach it and approach it, because not everybody learns the same, as we all know.
Not everybody knows French like Scottish German people.
Yeah, and it wasn't. I mean, it's not like I speak really good French, but this is grade 4 level French, so it wasn't that hard to pick it up at that point. And I had to find a way that I could actually teach, because he was more of a kinesthetic learner, and whereas they're teaching a little bit more academic and not as hands-on in the schoolroom. So found a way and figured it out. And then, so I think from there, that just set me on a different path, right? Because I kept helping throughout grade school. I joined the peer tutor club in high school, right? Like, that's not a cool, sexy club. I ran the camera club in high school. That's why I'm still a bit of a, what do we call it? Like equipment geek or whatever. Like when it comes to, tech junkie, when it comes to this stuff, right? I love those kinds of YouTube channels, and I'm staring at a camera right now in front of us here. So, and then in, college, I was still tutoring in college. And then I took a career where I was helping other people learn how to run this franchise model that I was really successful in too, right? I did that up until the age of 36, 37. So, and I still go back and speak, and I'm a consultant, and I still go to help people, right? So I think some people are here to serve at a very high level and to be that person who's not afraid to speak at the front of the room or on a podcast or have their own podcast or own YouTube channel or whatever it might be. And just, I've always thought about just being surrounded by a tribe and like, how can I help people struggle less? Because we can't do everything for everybody, but there's definitely ways that we can help people struggle less along their journey and just get there faster, right? Be that extra gas in the tank, that extra motivation, whatever they might need, right? That extra tool that they need to make sure that the car can go faster in this like crazy race called life.
That's awesome. So in 4th grade, that was when you had first experienced this calling and you realized that this is what I want to do for the rest, in any capacity, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life.
Yeah, I liked it. I liked the satisfaction of helping someone else. I mean, there was a little bit of money involved there, but we're talking about 1984 money. It wasn't anything big by any means, but it was an extra bonus. And I was like, okay, this could be a thing, right? And always there to help people, right? When you're one of the smarter kids in class, usually you get most people coming up to you, asking you answers and things like that too, right? But school is a lot different than the real life. So a lot of people can't make that transition over from school to real life. And that's why it was very cool that I got to run some businesses while I was still a teenager. And then you can actually see if there's some correlation in there mixed in with motivation and work ethic and all those different things, not willing to stop. That's what makes people successful.
Ben Shapiro had a line once. I don't remember exactly what the context was they was talking about, but he said, boys will either build or they'll break. So in our playroom, actually, we have like playroom rules on it. It's all of the classics, like make everybody feel welcome, blah, blah, blah. But one of them is build, don't break. Because I think that's such a foundational lesson for kids, particularly boys, but I do believe for kids in general to have is we're not put on this earth to break things down, because it's very easy to break things down and you will want to it sometimes. And when you grow up and you like building things, there might be some times where you do decide like, no, it would be really cool to break something down. But usually that's motivated by some negative feeling, jealousy, anger, something like that. Yeah. And like I said, I do believe, as Ben Shapiro said also, it's, sorry?
But you can't not break things either, right? Like I definitely build way more than you break, but sometimes you got to break yourself down a little bit. Even in our coaching program, I took this from the sporting world that you can only go hard for about 3 weeks. And the 4th week, you got to pull back a little bit and just let your body regenerate, like mental health break, whatever it might be, right? It's not like we're trying to plateau, but you got to slow down for a little bit, let the body build itself back up again, and then you can go to the next step too, right? But
I would call
maybe
that
a little
building
break
too.
would be a micro failure or something like that, but you got to be building way more than you're breaking, for sure.
So I would actually call that a break. Like, I think that, for example, a big important part of personal development is sleeping, for example, and is rest.
Yeah.
That's not to say that like you just rest as much as you can and like you'll just grow. It doesn't work like that. But part of the building is the breaking, and it's got to be very almost like a controlled forest fire. Like, it has to be very controlled, and you can't just throw like these forest fires out because like, no, don't worry, we're doing something good for the environment. Like, it has to be controlled. But I would even say, for example, like I kind of just thought of this, but there's probably a reason why it's called a break, because you're breaking your growth for a moment, which is part of the building. But what's interesting is it is foundational, I believe, that every kid is basically built or designed to either always want to build things or break things. And as a fourth grader, you recognize either intuitively or consciously or subconsciously that your mission was to build at such a young age. I just think that's awesome.
Thank you.
So let's say you could go back in time and do anything different in your journey to where you are today, both either personally or professionally. Is there anything that you would do? And if so, what would it be?
Man, that's a tough one, because, at some point we are where we are because of our past, right? And if you change too many things along the way, it's like those different movies that we see, whether I think it's the butterfly effect or whatever it might be, that your path might be totally altered to the point where you're on such a different path you don't even recognize yourself. But if it was just to be something simple, it'd just be to be more confident, like have faith that it's going to work out. And that's something that's what's the difference between fear and faith, right? One's a vision that's guided, one's a vision that's not guided as much. And maybe surround myself with a few other people that would be filling me up more, and having that certainty or that faith sort of a vision. But I probably wouldn't change too much, maybe lean into things that I liked a little bit sooner, a little bit faster. And I think, again, that comes down to that faith type of a vision. But, we're all on our path. And I think it's important to surround yourself with the right people, get the right mentors in your life. And, people have been there, done that, willing to share with you, help, because there's lots of room at the top, guys and gals. So, and I'm here to help people help pull them up too. So
I think that's an important thing for people to really hear, is that you wouldn't change any of the mistakes that you've made or anything like that. Really, what you would change is now you have obviously the luxury of hindsight, and hindsight is 2020, to recognize that while you were working hard, it didn't happen when you thought maybe it quote unquote should have, but you kept on going, and you, despite all of the troubling times and turmoil emotionally, psychologically, whatever it was. And really the only thing that you change is to just consistently remind yourself of the stuff that maybe you subconsciously knew all along, that it was going to get there. Because there's probably a lot of people listening to this that are struggling in their own ways. And the first thing you think of is when you're in your own story, not that I'm only on page 20 and there's 200 pages in my book, but you think this is my story now. This is the book. And the only thing that you change is to recognize consistently, like, no, this isn't. This is just a part of it.
That's right. Every day you wake up and you can make new changes, right? You can get on a slightly different path, and it's all these 1% changes that you make over time, right? Usually people don't wake up and have some epiphany and go, I'm just going to go and quit this job and move to this country and do this thing. It's like, no, we're on all these little micro, smaller decisions and changes to our trajectory over time. Just make sure that you're never going to stop making those 1% changes. It's the compound effect, right? I actually give 3 books to all my VAs to read in the beginning if they have some downtime in between work. And one of them is the compound effects. I want them to understand just like all these good choices and positive things that you're doing, what they can lead up to over time. And it's just, getting 1% better every single day. It sounds very easy or very cliche, but man, when you look at investing and returns, it really does add up. And I'm always trying to become 1% better every single day.
So let's say if you were a real estate agent that focused on, let's say, residential sales and purchases, you were a real estate agent that was struggling in this market, which is slower than it has been and looks like it's continuing to slow. What would you do next?
Yeah, well, I think you don't have to do anything. Again, any problem in the world has already been figured out, right? So you can go look at what other agents did during slower economies and how they could break out. And it usually comes down to Never cut back on your marketing budget. If anything, increase your marketing budget. And if you don't have a marketing budget, figure out a way to get a bigger marketing budget. And not all marketing has to be expensive either, right? It could just be like giving value, so you're trading time, because everybody's either got time or they got money. So make sure that you're getting that exposure and that reach through some creative marketing, because again, you're in the marketing branding space. Not all marketing and branding is created equal, right? You don't have to reinvent the wheel, but it should be something that catches people's attention. Maybe it's just, literally this weekend, I think my kids got to participate in a few different things that were put together by realtors, whether it was, watch the Mario movie at the park, or rent the movie theater or the ice pad rink or anything like that. But I think people are also missing that one-on-one interaction. The more that you can actually get out there and still knock on doors and show face and talk to people and bring people together. I got asked to speak to a big group of realtors, and they're basically going to get 300-400 people in a room, right? So it's when you can actually spend the time and, make the mailing lists and do the extra admin work behind the scenes to bring people together, even if it's just goodwill or just authentically helping people. Because I get free pieces of marketing material in the mail, and a lot of them just go right in the recycling bin. Or there's actually things that you might actually use, right? They've actually taken a little bit of time, looked at your social media, see that you like to eat at a certain restaurant, and gave you a $20 gift card there for your birthday. I mean, that stuff just shows that thoughtfulness, that extra mile. And I've got this saying, when you go 110%, like when you do that extra bit that nobody else is willing to do, that's actually going to get you the result you're looking for. It's not going to be putting in 90% or 80% or 70%. All those, it's not 70% in equals a 70% result. You're going to get diminished returns. So that's why you've got to put in more than what you think is you're actually capable of doing, because you'll always benefit by going that extra mile. So I'd say just find different ways to lead with value, market a little bit harder, stand out, get that one-on-one face attention with them, and don't be afraid to just outwork the competition too. It's a great time to take market share during the slower economies, because so many people give up, they throw in the towel, they change careers, and maybe being a realtor was a little bit too easy in the past, bunch of years, right? In an industry that's only going up. Well, what about when it's going down, or when your commission checks are smaller? Are you still willing to work as hard? If the answer is not 110% yes, then you're in the wrong industry. You shouldn't be in the service industry.
Absolutely. So what's next for you?
What's next for Kory? And my main company that I run is Infinite Real Estate Results, or Infinite Results period. And we help real estate investors and entrepreneurs get just better at what they're trying to achieve, and get there faster, be able to retire sooner, grow a bigger portfolio, or improve their businesses. So it's something that's really dear and near to my heart. There's a lot of small business owners and real estate investors here in Canada, and we are the lifeblood of the country, and more people can't be afraid of that sort of thing. So I'm always just growing our tribe bigger. Like, we're starting pretty sizable meetup groups now in the GTA. So that's something that if people follow me on the different platforms, they can find out more about. Growing the YouTube channel, more course content, more of everything really. So I'm not slowing down. I mean, it's been quite the wild ride during COVID, but over the last 6 months, I've definitely been able to catch my breath a little bit and get ready to go to that next level here too. So we know that there's going to be people out there that are hurting, and they need better guidance. They need help. And there's going to be a playbook that's probably only going to be, sort of to insiders, right? These inside kind of people that stay in touch with people like myself that are very busy, and maybe want to do it in a one-to-many kind of a scenario, or a one-to-one scenario, or only in rooms that we open the doors to, or whatever it might be, right? And I produce a lot of free content and stuff too, but I think, long story short, it's just going to be helping people continue to navigate through these challenging times, because what we're going through in the financial markets, it's never really been seen before. Some of this is man-made. Some of it's, I think, even the people behind everything don't even know what might happen when they start to push the button on different things. So there's a lot of debt being printed out there, and our money's been unhinged from anything of real value for a long time. There's going to be new superpowers, coming through in the world. So it's a deep rabbit hole we could go down, but I think the importance is just, stay with the tribe that's going to be close to the source, which is what we're doing.
Absolutely. Okay, Kory, how can people get in touch with you?
Hey, pretty easy to find, all things Kory MacKinnon. So you can go to my website, korymackinnon.com, follow me on Instagram, YouTube, Threads, X, everything, right? So, but yeah, I'm probably most active on Instagram and Facebook.
Thank you so much for your time and coming on the show, Kory. We really appreciate it.
No, my pleasure, man. This has been a lot of fun. Hopefully your audience gets some value from it, and looking forward to having you on my podcast here when we fire that up very shortly.